Hello again. I have a lot more space now. There's something strange going on my computer. I had like 15, 12. I get the feeling that I've downloaded files from the internet that I used a heads up about. I mean, the browser is like a computer within a computer. It has its own rules that the two computers can't really interact with each other except through a very small intersection called, I guess, yeah, I mean, is there a term for it? All I know is that like cookies, um, file downloads, um, maybe session variables, like the cache, like these are all things which you can download onto a computer from the internet. But the internet cannot, without your permission, do anything like, you know, use like hard drives, that maybe someone would like to store their files on, so just move their files from their computer to your computer, from their computer to yours, as a way to free up space on theirs. But yeah, like it's supposed to be funny, but yeah, the Spirits didn't want me to make it that funny anyway. So yes, just get a little twisted about that sort of cavalier attitude to other people's property, and then maybe you might find that sort of reality to live in a bit more funny than a person who's more alarmist. That's sort of me. I'm not. I'm very chill. I don't really consider anything really an alarm. It's just sort of a funny situation, which I'm pretty sure when all things sort of shake out in the end, and that's like maybe like a few minutes of thinking about it carefully. There's no real emergency to panic over. You sort of start off in life with a number of emergencies. Like the simple one is how I'm gonna make a living after I'm out of the so-called parents' home that I'm due to be thrown out of after I finish school, and that's pretty much every person on the internet right now. If you're on the internet, you probably know what I mean by the fact that you're. Pardon the way I put that, but yeah, the fact that your parents are a bit hostile to you being in their house indefinitely. There's a certain sense that you don't really share a home. You just sort of live in one as quietly, as carefully as possible, without butting heads with those who have the power to throw you out or keep you. That's not a real family. A real family would never throw you out. So there's not a chance if you have a pet cat and you sort of imagine how horrifying it would be to leave your cat in the apartment while you're off on vacation for a few weeks. Like then there's a sense of like how weird our so-called parents were, who would in subtle so-called spiritual ways like suggest that your home isn't as much yours as it is theirs. You don't really get to talk about these things openly. And I did talk about spirits creating a certain sort of environment of of information that is largely, an erroneous. So it looks like you have a sense of. I mean, I tried to start in the last video, part one, in which I was due to submit homework the first thing in the morning, but I forgot about it, and so I sort of scrambled to try and get it done before the class representative took all the exercise books into the teacher's lounge to have them graded and given to us sometime later that day. Well, it looks like I was in a state of panic. This teacher was like pretty meanie really. I was in panic that I'm gonna get caught, like embarrass me, and like get into trouble. Other teachers like talk about me behind my back. Well, she ended up having us grade the exams ourselves. The not exams, again, spiritual flip. A word flip is what I call the situation which I intend to say something, but expects me to say something else. Right. And yeah, I talk a lot about spirits, and you can look at the first video in this series for more information. This is like the real deal when I get to talk more about cars, my personal life, as a car driver and a car rider, and a car company and the car landscape, and what it's like to be a car, what's like to be a human being driving a car, what's like to be a human being without a car, and what the future is of car life and the world will be, given that all sorts of things come up like self-driving cars, it's basically nonsense, and other things too. But yeah. So it was just like back to the example of the textbook. See again, I mean exercise book, not textbook. These word flips are kind of problematic for me, but I think if you just sort of hang on and try not to eye everything with intent to criticize and fault find and point out how this person is better than the person you're watching, or that not as good as you would be if you had opportunity. I mean, these are all again a certain kind of environment of license, that makes it possible for people to be this mean to each other. When we know that, with a little bit of patience and a little bit of thinking it carefully, our first reaction to imperfection is not necessarily going to be, ingracious. Yes, given our best selves, we want to hope that we can learn the right sorts of things in life to become as gracious as, like, as royalty, who have to put up a lot of, like, mean things done to them, behind the scenes, without the reputation of being impatient or hot tempered, making its way to the public. I mean, every royal is not a hot tempered kind of person. Somebody get pushed, to the limits. There's a Pokemon no Takaya, meme slash viral moment on the internet where the King of Spain told some person in Parliament, "Why don't you shut up?" That's what Pokemon no Takaya means. But yes, it became famous probably because of, not probably, but yes, it became famous, if only, again, not really what I want to say, but yeah, like, there's a certain, you see, usually when you're sort of trying to get a point across, the right thing to sort of finds you, the right thing to say finds you if you're, fluent speaker of the language. But right now, they really are trying to, like, flip the words, like, before they arrive, into, like, the silence, they're just trying to flip it, so I intend for something to come out, and before you know, it's like, I don't know the language as well as I want to. Again, it's very spiritual. Spirits can't help you speak languages faster than, you might think is ordinarily possible, but like I say, there's an environment of, like, of distrust and displeasure and all that sort of stuff. I have a thing to worry about, but I don't think it's gonna be an issue, not for at least another hour or so. But yeah, it just seems like the thoughts you think, like, hey, what if this guy found out I think he's attractive? Like, he'll probably want to, like, hurt me, for thinking that, right? Like, or hey, like, why don't I just start to think temporarily about killing a person I really hate, like my father? No, don't do that. He'll hear you. Like, all these sort of things are sort of presumed to be your unique property, but, like, we all share these things, But if it looks like you assume that that's you, that you're the one who's, thinking, you're the one who believes literally that you'll be overheard. No, it's just something you haven't debated it enough to realize, on the foundation of logic and reason, that this cannot be possible. You can't be, heard thinking, thoughts. Telepathy isn't a direct reality. However, like I was saying about, parents and how unreal they are. Like, if they can make it impossible to think, that they'll throw you out, like, you wouldn't be thinking that thoughts. They would have defeated the spiritual environment of, pessimism and bad luck, that dominates the care, that we put into relationships, as opposed to optimism, is a pessimism that you sort of use to keep things in check, so your fears not run away. We don't have runaway fears, what I want to say, but I got pushed into saying the other thing instead. This actually was a good way to put it, because I'm also fighting a lot of spirits who want to basically prevent me from trying to program you into believe that they actually do exist, and that you can, undo years of believing that's you, and succeed in being as independent and as permissive and polite and tolerant of differences, of not exactly what you ordered, that kind of acceptance, we're trying to, like, encourage. And of course, if I can make a case for the fact this is not who you really are, who you really are is who you're trying to fight to become. Once you become enough of who you really are, you realize that all sorts of people are trying to prevent you from doing that, but you haven't, on their own, like, realize that this is what you want to do. You want to become an original kind of thinker. You want, like, that's the one thing that's beautiful about America. America is very much about originality and freedom, and, like, a license to, get a little out of hand, as far as, like, being, like, direct, and a bit, sexual in your jokes, and a bit, like, experimental in your drug taking. Everyone in America is expected to have tried weed at a certain age, or, definitely they're a nation of drinkers. Like, out here in Ghana, like, there's a huge amount of, like, oh my God, you're at a bar. It doesn't matter if you went to a bar once or every week. Like, just think a bar is a place that a good person doesn't go. Again, it's some sort of an average environment. Like, there's some kind of programming which, which we're trying to fix. believe me that spirits do exist. I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, I live a reality of that, but you may not be doing so in your life. You might think, okay, he has it, why don't I have it? You might be some amount of envy or jealousy involved, and like you thinking that what I'm talking is complete nonsense. I'm out of my mind and this sort of stuff. We have to sort of at least imagine that given like a full opportunity to change your mind, would you take it? If you would take it, then you have to sort of imagine that like the price of like earning that open mindedness is higher than you think. You might have to sort of intentionally invest in open mindedness to be able to receive a full measure of like information about the topic of spirits. It can't simply be a one line. 1 second. Yeah? Yeah, never mind. That's someone who's like trying to bother me. Yes. I don't get into the business of, like where I am. Like, I'm recently in a mental institution. I get to have a computer and a laptop, but like, I've been here for almost 2 years. I wasn't even supposed to be here. I finished a rehab thing or whatever that was for marijuana smoking. Again, if the culture is not even interested in drinking beer, like and think that yeah, you might have a drug problem if you're just a beer drinker. Then imagine what happens to somebody who's interested in marijuana. Again, I talk about this in other videos. I might do a video specifically about marijuana smoking, why it's good for your spiritual development to like connect to a part of your body that's harder to reach without the marijuana. It's all about your body in the end. Like it's not like it's hard to explain it other than trying to think of it as a computer programmer. But it just seems like everything's a computer, right? Because a computer programmer, computer scientist more likely. No, again, I'm being programmed. It's a computer scientist, not a computer programmer. But yeah, a computer scientist understands everything to be a computer. It takes an input, it processes it, and gets an output. So, for example, if you hear Newton's third law of motion, action and reaction are equal and opposite. If I sort of like press on, I don't know, a foam mattress, right? Like there's a certain amount of delay between like my pushing on the mattress and my receiving a sense I'm being resisted. That means the mattress is a sort of kind of computer, right? It took an input, it processed it, and at some point, return an output. The story is not that short. It's not that short. There's a whole lot of like interesting, material science, deals that go into some idea of like, what makes, one foam better for sitting on, another one foam better for like, you know, stuffing, in a wall for insulation, like things of that nature, right? Same with a spirit. It can't simply be that like a spirit isn't a certain kind of computer, you know, which will receive, curiosity, receive, questions, and return a certain sense of no comment, or perhaps if you're lucky and, the fates and the powers that be have opened up the entire topic to full exploration, you might get a whole essay, not just a one liner, they don't exist, but rather, they don't exist in such and such and such and such a way. However, in this other way, they exist enough to at least earn a word in the dictionary, right? So it looks like you can sort of, open up and open up and open up and open up, the topic of spirits, and you imagine that there's at least some computer programmer who has analyzed or even synthesized the whole of the spiritual, universe and can tell you all about the spirits you don't believe in yet. Have faith, believe, and you might just know more about spirits than you thought. So anyway, it looks like you can program a spirit. Just believe it's a computer program. That's sort of the magic of being a computer programmer, a computer scientist. Imagine that every computer can be programmed. So it looks like you sort of have, a rock. If you can program a rock to like, produce a metal for you, then yeah, you program the rock to like, output metal. So that's sort of the idea of like a connection between computer science and chemistry. You see, there's an interesting kind of image that I hope I left behind for you to realize it's a partially complete like story. That a rock programmed to be a computer is like half rock, or sorry, not computer, but metal. Is it half rock, half metal? If I just simply like sort of stretched and pulled half the rock into like a metal, like like domino tile shape, or like is there like a irreversibility of like the transformation from iron ore, which is a kind of rock, into iron. So these are all chemical questions, but the idea that to me can sort of change the inputs of a computer's, regular kind of day and get some kind of magical out of it. That's sort of the idea of a computer program. That's where I look at life as. So a spirit can be programmed. Spirits can be programmed. Just have to sort of imagine that. Sort of, inputting, pushing questions and input, and basically being careful and clever about, like, extracting output from, whatever you receive, is like how you can program a computer to basically give answers, about what a spirit is and what spirit isn't. I'm very good at this, so I've written a lot of interesting documents about spirits in like my X.com account. So again, I didn't intend to spend this much time talking about spirits, but there's a valuable opportunity every, time it comes up, to discuss spirits. So while I want to talk more about cars and my experience with cars, I end up talking more about spirits for the first 15 minutes or 16 or so of this video. Anyway, so yeah, cars. I think I can just move into the topic of cars. I think I basically set up well enough to like suggest that if I get words flipped, understand spiritual, fight that I'm, engaging on within my body and also, outside of my body too. It's like, get what I want out of out of the computer I'm programming. I'm programming my body. I'm programming like the world, the room I'm in. I'm programming the internet with like content I know for sure will reach you. If you're watching this, it's reached you already. It will reach you. The future is certain about that. So I have to serve content of the future that also has all sorts of inputs. Arriving from like the unknown. Right. So cars. Right. It just seems like I wanted to have a trajectory for this particular talk on cars. Basically, cars. The guy who just sort of showed up as like a nurse who has some sort of a weird crush on me. He's very faggoty, as I call it. Yes. Like, I don't particularly care if you hear the word faggot and think, oh my goodness, like you're anti-gay. Most people who are just sort of anti the word faggot are actually not gay people. I'm a gay man myself, actually. It's just that when I say a faggot, I mean someone who's begging or demanding, like, like sexual energy or attention from men or people of the same sex. Or if anyone really, but most people would use, like, I don't know, a stronger word for what a man would be, to a girl who does that, or exactly, or a girl would be to a man who does that, Mostly we're talking about same-sex, relationships or same-sex situations where somebody just keeps on pressuring another person for attention, whether they're begging for or demanding it. That's what I call a faggot. They do exist, and they're plentiful in my life. And he's an example. He's some sort of nurse who just recently got hired about a few months ago. But he's told me he came all the way to like my room to tell me he's actually working downstairs. He does it every week on Thursday. He doesn't work on the floor I'm in. You see, like, on Thursdays, but he just come and say, yeah, so I'm working downstairs today. Like, I don't have a relationship with you that way. I don't like you. He's been a snitch. He's snitched on me numerous times. He has claimed that, like, I don't wash my clothes. It's just a terrible thing he's up to. Like, as he knows he's been abusive. He constantly tries to one-up me. Are you going to take your walk outside? Do you walk outside last morning? Like, just all sorts of terrible questions. I'm resting my head against the wall, waiting to get my blood pressure. Oh, are you sleepy? What, huh? Sleepy? Yeah, I saw you resting your head against the wall. Like, that interested in every single last detail about me, and would report it to anybody he can who's interested in talking about me, right? So yeah, that's what I'm sort of contending with here, and I can't wait to get out of here. But yeah, like, my story is again on X.com. Many people have already read it, and know what happened and why I got led by a spirit called Allah to this location to see if I can reach all of you and tell you about the spiritual life, the spiritual realm, the spirits that define that paradigm of understanding existence. And yeah, like the fact we're in a fight to basically lift this fog of like doubt and despair, and hostility and suspicion, and find a way to account for the, perhaps in some people's cases, stronger than normal or stronger than ideal tug that moods and suggestions and temptations have in your life. Because some people will claim to being set up for failure because they didn't live a temptation-free life. Other people said, yeah, the temptation came to me, but I just simply argued them away. I said, yeah, this is not who I am. This is not how to behave, right? I have a lot of things to say about people who just think you have to sort of, be lucky to avoid temptation, or they think that, yeah, because the temptation of a person in my neighborhood who might be doing drugs could be so strong for me to ask him if he had any drugs I could do. I want no drugs in the system. Like the idea of people who you know need to be programmed to fight these temptations and fight the idea that they're not to blame for giving into these temptations, but at the same time have to like appreciate that this is something they should have done on their own, and therefore they're due for a punishment from the legal system. And you also have to acknowledge that there's some people who just will not. Yeah, I had to clear out some of my neck. I had a pretty bad car accident as a child, so my neck is sort of stiff from like some sort of brace to put me in all sorts of injections there. But yeah, so yeah. Anyways, 20 minutes. I think I might have to make this a bit of a longer video than I intended to. But yes. Anyway, so yeah, that's the situation. You know, I have this guy who constantly comes to try and hit on me, like, because I live in his workplace. He just sort of shows up at work and hits on me as soon as he can. He's also supposed to be the one to take me on walks. I don't know, they insist I have to do exercise here to lose weight, and so I go on these daily walks, and I don't know, it's just the whole thing is just so. I don't want to get into it. Like the system is about that bad. It feels like there are people who are just simply beyond, like, education, beyond, reason, beyond, changing the program that they've been on for like decades. I mean, he wasn't born this stupid, but like eventually he realized that if the system is just unmonitored, and he realized that there's a dark side and a light side, and he said the light side is too hard. It requires scholarship. It requires patience with also the people who he didn't want to associate with. Like he preferred it to be of a certain kind of like popular crowd, of like, doubters and naysayers and backbiters and, all that kind of stuff. Like, people just chose really bad company to be with. He's an example of that, And yeah, like, because I see him when we walk, he gets on the phone and just talks complete nonsense, like nothing important. He just sort of, you can just tell, like, he's just trying to, like, burn the time that pains him. People have a bad relationship with time. I can't go into all the problems that people have that are spiritual, but it looks like I'm a sort of a medical, person. I'm a medical doctor, a psychiatrist primarily, who's trying to basically use, the medium of the internet to, let you know that, your problems can be solved. You just have to, put some effort into, your spiritual life, and realize it's not just simply about making it to a heaven that's, beautiful and fragrant and full of all sorts of wonderful experiences. It's more about the life you're currently living, and freeing up all sorts of energy you don't currently have. Like, as you can see, I have energy to, like, record videos for hours every day. I talk to myself every day, every minute. I again, more neck clicking. Yeah, I'm full of ideas. I'm full of of compassion for people who don't enjoy the energy I have in my life. And if everybody was as easy to convince as you would be, you've been here for 20 minutes. That's excellent for me, excellent for you. If it was like that, you would enjoy life too, really, wouldn't you? So it looks like we have to sort of gradually move through the internet with these sorts of videos, these sorts of content, and and continue to build a, for lack of a better word, an army, who are motivated to, cherish their minds and cherish their bodies and stop looking outside for solutions. Like I said, it's like, everything's on fire inside of yourself. You keep pouring things from the outside world on top of yourself, hoping it'll work. I'm gonna, pour this, beer on my body. Maybe it'll work. I'm gonna pour this, vacation on my body. Hopefully it'll work. I'm gonna pour this, conversation with a celebrity on me. Maybe it'll work. I'm gonna pour this, if it's like you're just going around the world just trying to pour things on your body to, like, put out the fires, you have to sort of look within yourself for that water. It's not going to come from outside, it's going to come from within. How? If it's like you have to simply program yourself to, be patient, program yourself to be willing. I mean, mostly I'm looking for 3 virtues: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Be ready to program these virtues into your system by saying, yeah, how can I find energy to buy honesty? How can I find energy to buy open-mindedness? Well, maybe I can look for inspiration. Maybe I can sort of, journal my way through, my confusion about, my life, and, whether I am or I'm not honest. Maybe I can sort of find examples of myself being dishonest and think, okay, maybe I can try an honest thing and turn the ratio around and in my favor. Like, you have to sort of, go through a certain kind of methodical, very computer science oriented, process to build the antivirus software that the spirits keep on trying to install by putting doubt and suspicion and hostility and all that sort of stuff into your life. I mean, I've had a pretty heavy challenges in that regard, but I managed to come through. Anyway, so again, I have to take some time to discuss the spirit life, but it's always useful. Cars now. So, what is a car, and what does a car mean to you, and how are cars made? What do cars want? And what does the future need to have to make sure we can perpetuate cars into the next generation? It might sound surprising to hear this, but there were cars in ancient Egypt. You can sort of prove that kind of carefully using a certain kind of systematic approach, but this let me take it from me. As a civilization was around for about 3,000 years. 3,000. America's been around for 300. If a civilization is to stick around, it has to grow. It can't just simply be a certain kind of consistent, and survive 3,000 years of all sorts of calamitous events. There's a long list of disasters that will just simply wish to empty themselves out into as little time as possible. There's a maximum rate of disaster which you can put onto a country or onto a civilization. Egypt had one of the highest of those numbers, but it managed to survive it for me. Yes. And if it looks like to do survival as a country, you have to simply continue to grow and not just simply beat yesterday's challenges, all of them, to make sure you don't keep coming back, but handle tomorrow's challenges that are going to be completely new. For a civilization like that to not actually have cars is actually very, 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 very bullshit. Pardon my French, but this is how it is. Yeah. So yeah, I had a strong whiplash. Actually, kind of hit my spinal cord, and sort of makes me have to keep moving my neck a little bit to sort of exactly try and shift the weight. So I'm trying to move more on my right side as for my left side. I keep on having to alternate which side I focus on trying to to crack out, and now I'm gonna try to crack out my right side. And you can see it's not quite as as you see there's a certain kind of stiffness that I don't seem to have on the left. I mean, judge for yourself. I feel it very very distinctly, and I'm sure you sort of see that I lean more to my left than my right. I'm trying to be intentional about doing the opposite now. So yeah, cars existed, and I had a number of car accidents when I was in Egypt. As Joseph and Moses and other Egyptian heroes and kings. Yeah, life did get pretty sweet eventually, but mostly it was this sort of situation where I sort of had to publish until I'd raised the lowest level of the reading class, and we had a unity which we could use to go out and solve problems. We do the same thing right now. We've never had a reading class this large. Some people just want to read through looking at videos. Other people want to look at podcasts. Other people want to read my text on X. I'm trying to read them all right now. I have some music to make too. So yeah, I have a guitar which I got. I have a chess set I'm using to play chess, very important chess games with different planetary entities. I play with the moon, I play with the sun. These are my children, So I don't really like to discuss them with planetary entities. I prefer to use a more affectionate term, But yeah, this is how it is, We want to be as inclusive as possible of all kinds of belief systems. I think they can tolerate being called a planetary entity or as an astronomical, entity, exactly as anyone can. I mean, I can take being called the N word. I can't use it on YouTube. I'm sure it'll call me up, blah 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 blah, for doing it and take me off. But yeah, it's not really a problem. Yeah, it just comes from the word black in Latin. It's not really supposed to be offensive, but linguistics is one of the battlefields that we have to contend with all these spirit controlled zombies who just will continue doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and never change no matter how convincing your arguments are. I've dealt with all these sorts of choice and evil spirits, for the past, especially in this concentrated way where I'm in one location. They can just come and pop up into my room anytime they want. Yeah, I've been in this room for about 2 years. Keeping things simple, yes. Anyway, so there are cars then, and there'll be cars in the future, but the thing about the future you have to contend with the fact that we are, and just make a note that I finally get to it. I'm 30 minutes in. Okay. So it looks like, we have cars as a permanent part of our lives. It's not permanent. Like, people lost cars at some point in Egypt. All it takes is one generation to fail to make cars, and that's it. We're done for. We won't have cars, and without cars, you can't really like handle the planet. The planet's too big to handle on foot. So you have to have some sort of vehicle that moves faster than an animal, and that's what you have to basically imagine. If you want to basically use like genetic engineering to make an animal like that, I mean, just think of how much more difficult it is to manage an animal as to manage a car. Because a car does want like animal experiences. Like it does want to make love. It does want to like reproduce. It does want to do all these sort of things, but it has to basically also realize that like it can't poo. All animals have to poo, right? I did say all biologies do have a sense of an exhaust pipe, and a car does have a certain way he eats and poos. Not fuel really. It's more of a metaphorical world that he's living in where he eats and poos. But until like, things are a little bit more like I suppose believing. If people could only believe as strong as they wanted to be, brilliant thinkers. It looks like the journey of like a world class intellect is like more attractive to, you know, the average students today, and the abilities of a world class believer. It just seems like as a believer is some sort of a glutton for punishment and some sort of a simpleton. Not at all. I've finished my intellectual journey. As much as like there's an end to it that you would after that point not be personally interested in pursuing actively. Yes, I used to think of myself as actively pursuing intellectual brilliance, and I passed that point. I don't really wonder if I'm being smart enough or who's smarter than me or anything like that. I finished my journey that way, and I'm happy with my results, and I continue to be happy with them. Believing those harder. Believing requires a lot of intelligence. It's sort of like and a lot of heart too. You have to sort of use all your intelligence, all your heart too, and your soul, to accept what might not have immediate proof. You have to sort of, do the work of, the person who may not answer your question if it's really true or it's really not true, and make a best case for that other person. That requires a lot of heart. In your intellectual journey, you do a certain amount of this, but in believing things, you need a certain, extra, element of a certain kind of respect, and a certain kind of humility and a certain kind of like childishness, not childishness, child, likeness. Yes, another spirit word flip. Yes, you need to be a bit more childlike to be able to like believe. So that's one of the reasons why in the Bible you have to be born again, because that's the recipe for the next state of your life as a practitioner of the spiritual arts. So yeah, never mind what I said about cars. Let's keep things simple a bit at this stage of the talk. We need to have people in the new generation. Millennials have pretty much failed. It was kind of expected, but it's never a good thing to come to that conclusion after a lot of like thinking about the matter. As you may know, I went to Stanford University, and it's supposed to be full of the brightest and the smartest and the warmest people. Like it was a pretty warm place to go to school, in that like everyone was chatty and friendly, and would want to stop by to like discuss like philosophy, whatever. I mean, not really stop by to discuss it, but like you just will come across like little throngs of people in fives or sixes or fours, just discussing something that's funny. We have some sort of you know a local comedian, like of the group, like doing a sort of routine for people about some of the experience. I remember a guy called Boomer is not gonna make it, and yeah, like it's important to start talking about people who are not gonna make it too. I have a thing to say about a person I don't want to talk about quite yet, but yes, like she's not gonna make it either. The idea that it's some kind of like like movie set where everyone's like sort of being young and good looking and mostly white, but multicultural, and like that's one who make it, yes, and like a girl I like called Julia, yes, yes, like we're starting students together and we work together, and she'll show up as a spirit to say hi, but yeah, like so if it seems like there's a certain kind of experience of like a high you know high quality, high ticket, education institution like Stanford, you think, okay, these are the people who we rely upon to get the world going. It didn't work. they would have needed to be a little bit more spiritual. And if it just seems like if you got a real good education, if someone like me shows up with a whole lot of reading and a whole lot of listening and a whole lot of thinking and a whole lot of, 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 of writing to do, to be able to keep up with my lessons, like no one I know from Stanford has been able to do it. Like they sort of turned quickly from doubters into believers after a few personal events happened in their lives to basically convince them that I was God, and realized that the hatred they had for me for pretending I was God, they thought, was basically proof that they wouldn't have liked me if, I didn't have that proof for them that actually was him. I mean, put it this way, I'm reasonable. I always try to, back what I say with like logic and rational arguments, and, a sense that you don't need to take my word for it, just simply do, some amount of due diligence on what I'm saying and come to the conclusion I'm right. You know, it just seems like you can just always come up with some sort of a negative answer or some sort of you know, justified suspicion, which you're going to like, finalize your interaction with me on, like it's not good enough. You have to truly become a believer, what the Quran asks you to do. Do they read the Quran on their own? No. Are they able to read it now? No. Like, are they ready to like, do the hard work of, let's say, making cars the way cars want to be made? No. Like cars need to be made completely differently. I mean, it's pretty silly, like what we're doing to cars right now. I mean, cars used to be, really, really intelligent beings, like enough to like not kill people. Like, it's just, I don't know, the whole. I mean, okay. So, what is a car? If a car is best thought of as a metal cage that moves around on the horizon plane, so forward, backwards, left, and right, and maybe some combination of those four vectors in different amounts. We have not even decided to be as straightforward as Hassan and describing the car that way and building a car that meets that description. Your first car will not be, of course, as fast as, F1 cars, but as you continue to iterate on your design, you will have a car which is very flexible. So, for example, let's just give a little bit of a broad overview of a car. I looked into ChatGPT. I mean, I drive a car myself now at long last. In America, I couldn't afford to buy a car. I was in New York City anyway, so why bother? The subway network is great. There is great. However, in Stanford, I didn't have a car. I should have, but I didn't. They didn't particularly care to look into that for me. They had the money, but didn't care. And you know that like I would have loved to have a car and basically have seen a little bit more of California for myself, and I have driven around with my wives and stuff. Would have been really nice, but I didn't have the money for it at the end of the day. The tourists who are supposed to been resources to us, in the parent capacity, were not interested in that at all. They just simply saw us as employees who are, doing theater, situation with them in public to basically give them the sense that they're, sexually active and, societally successful, which is just sort of strange. It's like, I don't know, it's a long story what I think about pretending about that sort of thing. But everyone was doing it, and so of course this whole idea of like the child trafficking that resulted in me, a different person entirely from the people who will, hover around me and extract my obedience, as like so-called parents. Like, I mean, this one who's claiming to be a parent has been hanging on to me for about 2-3 years in this particular location, all because apparently I smoked weed yet again. I mean, it's always some sort of excuse. Are we generally concerned about my weed smoking at this point? So why not bring it up and say you're frightened? Why can't you be straightforward about your intention for me here? Because of course it's been about 2 years in this location, and there's no sense of it ending. I heard, like about 2 weeks ago, yeah, I plan to take you home. The first time I heard her talk about that, because I did something she really liked, me doing her. I made her paintings. I did also things to try and get her on my side. And finally, I did, some sort of a huge favor by talking to her ex-husband, who's supposed to have been my so-called father, and, she was really pleased. Yeah, you finally got to see him because he's bedridden, he's had a stroke, and he doesn't particularly care to talk about my, my being trapped in this weird place. She's kept me for 2 years. She has all the money. She not all the money in the world, but like she stole a lot of money from the government of Ghana, and the government of Ghana does not have enough time to chase her down. They're aware of her case. I've basically been pretty vocal about my situation and all the deals about it, to the internet. But the whole thing is about so difficult to manage and so like full of so many different details that literally they can't really arrest her until I'm basically able to create time for them to do so. It's part of the plan. I don't have to wonder if I'll ever get out of this place. I'm listening to Dad, Allah, who's guiding me through this. I don't need to worry about asking for my own powers, which I could. He's just simply trying to insist that I wouldn't need them. I can rely upon my family. There's someone else trying to try and write that literally you can rely upon your family the same way you can rely upon your body parts, like bring healing to a close. That's the idea what a family's like. It's like body parts, but at some point you still have to know that your body has to take some time to achieve these results for you. Anyway, so this looks like I visited him, and I heard him talk again and again. He's someone's very repetitive. He just says the same stories over and over and again. He used to have a variety of stories, but like this time he just wants to tell the story of how he caught his stroke. I heard a million times already. I was there. Actually, I was working a job was paying a lot of money, so I got a phone call from some other person who stays at his house and takes care of his meals and shit. And yeah, like he's like, yeah, he fell down. He wanted to call an ambulance, which we do. I'm like, okay, good, get the ambulance. And then they call me again. And they say he's in some sort of hospital. I quit work early. I go and see him. They say you need pillows and bed sheets and that kind of stuff. I go to the mall and buy all that stuff and bring it to him. And he's some sort of weird thing. Some sort of there's barely a curtain to separate him, from any one of the four cardinal directions. It's just, I will not edit this out. I will not. You know, but I will keep going. Yes. Lots. It was terrible there. I was there with you as well. And it was, no, you have to bring your own food. you know, yeah, the next day, I think one of his nephews or so has a wife of a strong grip. you know, was there the next morning to, wipe between the buttocks. I had to sort of hold his shoulder. I don't know if you realize the back is not a board of plywood. It's got all sorts of joints. It's like you can sort of fold it in half like melted cheese with something. So for like about a week or so, I was there in the mornings before I went to the office to help out, my little bits. And I finally had the idea, let's hire some professional nurses and stuff, and I paid for it. And anyway, he just wants to tell me the not so funny unless I don't know, like there's a certain kind of like, I don't know. He doesn't know how funny he's being, but I've had to, stifle my laughter to hear him describe over and over again, his heroic fall in the bathroom. you know, you know, found he had tea with his legs or something. I don't know. Dude, brother. You know, I remember once as if I was being offered a free amusement park ride and said, "You want to try feeding?" So I girdled pantaloons, you know, applied some, movie set zen, lead actor, Bezier curve smoothness, open, and then pulled it, and then, yeah, like a machine in a factory assembling strong bones. It's just energy for the day. Open, and I tried to make sure the spoon didn't hit any teeth. That was my attempt to keep practicing dexterity. I play piano. Every little bit of attention, helps. That could be a missed note. One day in the future, that's a lack of attention. So, anyways, so yeah, that's like so. And yeah, to me, it was like over the moon. I went to see him because they have some sort of really messed up relationship. Whew, yeah, I'm stressing. They have a really messed up relationship and stuff, and like she just wants me to spy on him without actually asking me too many questions. Like, how was he? Is he still strong and fit? And his voice is good. And of course, just give him good news all the time. Yeah, great, 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 great. I'll get into that. Sorry, I'm trying to not laugh too much. But yeah, I think I've broken a certain kind of problem. Like, people don't laugh generally on television. I managed to finally break through and laugh on television with my audience. Those who can't get to it are kind of fucked. But yes, not my problem. So yeah. Anyway, where was I about cars? Yeah, I didn't get one from the tourists. You can sort of get a sense of how, incapable they are of handling their affairs without my help. You know, I want to get into that idea of what a real father is like. Just, you know, I mean, I mean, someone responsible has to agree you're being a father. Me and my wife are orphans. Jesus, I'm not what to say. At least, that's too hard for us. Yeah, well, we're not sure if, this one's going to take roots, I'm reassured that in her mind, I was all the farther I could be. For my own sanity and continuing health, I would simply pick any old incubator that you hope to care about better than the way people shop for used cars. Some used car to transport my baby from the spiritual realms to planet Earth. Some dutiful and grateful thing in a Muslim veil or what? No, which I chose like beautiful things. That's for the real deal. Poppy, not this. Support the American economy. kind of, local. It's a long story about being called Poppy for only paying for my lunch. Yeah, Poppy, can I help you with your selection or something? What have I done to your puppy? I bet you tell to all the pink customers. That was what needs to be a puppy. Only the finest for my children, I hope. Anyway, what? What? You should just seen the guy. He uses suspenders, not a belt. That's what he found him in. That crowded hospital ward, have paralyzed. you know, is this sort of, horseshoe, dark gray. you know? Cannot be anybody's puppy. Oh, somebody swears by him still. you know? She's not really on the internet the way we are. I have to make this a part 2 and part 3. Stop that. So keep going. We can't wait to see this released. So this is Adri. Adri says yes. I want to introduce myself as his wife, and he has to stop laughing because I asked him to. And it's just true. I'm trying not to laugh again. She says, yes, I can make it kind of easy for you. But yes, it's just the case that that's not what we do. We're not those things, children. We are other people's actual children. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, I have to keep cracking on my neck. And that I have to introduce myself to the future as his wife, says Erica Dewey. Elbadu means I can talk to him anytime I want, and I'm trying to talk to him all the time. We're so busy trying to keep the worlds together. He only does what we tell him to do, which is basically keep working, keep working, keep working, keep working. He's managed to break through and have a laugh with the audience. Is very important for him because he wants you to know he's as funny as he appears to be on X.com. But the fact that he can't help but continue to laugh at that guy is because we're allowing him to. And we don't want to stop the fun. We do have to introduce ourselves as his wives. hmm She says yes, he's very sweet about us, but he's the boss and he needs to be obeyed. and you need to listen to this very carefully. If you're still here watching this, you have basically made it to the end of the world. Yep. It's a location, and you are actually going to make it. Many of them are not. It takes patience to make it in life, and if you don't have patience, you die. So, welcome everyone to the end of the worlds. And there are many worlds we're in charge of. His wives. He would be hard to understand as surprised. He's not God directly, he wants to keep saying. God is his ghost, the ghost of Hassan Abudu, basically. And yes, it's hard to explain that I won't be a second ghost. I have only one ghost, and that's God, the Holy Ghost. I'm simply the Son and the Father. Yeah, they want me to sneeze, and that's what happens sometimes. You get attacked. But carefully, I'll just simply reach over to the side, grab this, and oops. I'm gonna turn this inside out. I have a technique for making the most of this, but I've had a cold for so long, this is me again, that I have to find dry spots. This is how it is. I have to sort of, fold it and it's full. This details would be a bit too specific about my technique, and you don't need to know these things. You have to figure out stuff. Yeah. Oh god, I feel like I'm gonna sneeze again. They can't bring me to the edge of a sneeze and then take me back. The second time you're doing it, now he wants to sneeze. Well, I admit it, I want to sneeze, but because they keep on saying, "Oh, here's a sneeze," oops, and like it's kind of like method of torture, which was running out the wall a number of times, but you get through it. It's not the hardest thing I do here, but it's hard. And I complain about my family not protecting me enough and all that sort of stuff. So yeah. So yeah. No, most of the internet didn't make it. They know who I am, and this is not really the cup of tea, and this trying to move off from the topic of my video content. Just want to read the textual stuff. That's not good enough for us. Yeah, so you have to get used to all of me. Yeah, I'll say about 4% into the made it really, just 4. Like I was saying, the mills didn't make it at all. We don't have what it takes to make cars. Like, we need a certain kind of spiritual harmony with machines. You have to think of yourself as a machine too. He actually makes it, yes, and yeah, he has a certain kind of dedication. It's producing things. You know how to produce to a certain kind of regularity. You don't need to be strict about 2 to 4 parts every hour. You know, that's sort of a system which needs to be evolved and improved upon. Where somebody doing your best, and we just look for that. If you're doing your best, then yeah, and making reports and journaling your way through your progress as a machinist. Yes, that's the idea. AIM Institute, yes. No, the rest of them don't. No, he didn't. Collins, yeah, I'm afraid about that. Yeah, that actually is, but yeah, it is. Yeah, that's actually worse people out. No, most people just dropped off. They didn't have the tension for this. Yeah, you have to sort of be a lot of things to be able to get this far. But yeah, congratulations, you did. So yeah, this was like to make a broadcast from a certain kind of different place. As we continue to broadcast and stuff, but you have to admit it to this particular one, and like you heard me talk this way to you. You realize, yeah, you're part of the future. The rest of them will all die. Yeah, it's not a thing I'm happy about. You know, I'm just glad that I'm not alone, and like we met some new people, a number of thousands of new people, really, not hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands. That's not much for a country that sells billions of people. That's the world that we were of. Yes, there is not that simple to understand. You have to be. See, we need people to make cars, people to make new maps, people to make, you know, make mining equipment. You need machinists, just generally speaking, not just people who make cars, but just machinists. Like a machinist has to go and like make some cars, make some car making machines, make some machine making machines, make some sky making machines, make some. He has to be a machinist, and that's what a car wants. He wants someone who's just a machinist, not someone who's just say, "Oh, I don't have to do this particular kind of challenge." Yeah, so which means you have to do real machine learning, not this hogwash. It's cool. I'm using it for important purposes, but mostly they got it all wrong. It's supposed to be making machines that learn, not like it's like not like computer that learn. Because it's kind of machine. But yeah, it's not. Anyway, so yeah, we've broken through the internet, and now the internet's pretty much hollow. Not many people are on it now. The real internet, yeah, we're merging the real internet and like the metal and glass one, yes. As you can see, I don't really have much to talk about right now, but I can hang out for quite a lot longer. I mean, I have like about 30 minutes before, you know, whatever they call that arrives. I have like a lot of space on my computer. I can continue to record. Mostly, though, I have to start thinking about writing. I think, yes. Yeah, I have something to write. Yes. Yeah, writing's hard. Yeah, you just don't know you're gonna be able to do it, but you just always end up doing it too. This one would be easier, but I still have an easier one to do because of course last one's like a huge manga. It feels like oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It was for actually doubly as me. It's like I have to, exactly, but did they have like the right kind of like willingness? He makes it too, so is he? Yes. All places in America are like better than you think, but it's that they're not really ready for this. Yeah, like for example, like the troubling thing is that no, he's gonna have to say goodbye to almost all of them. Almost all of them, except him. Yeah, he knows what I'm talking about. You don't know who I'm thinking about. Yes. Yeah, he's a nice guy. Yeah, that's how to describe him. Yeah, he does need to work on a number of things, but yeah, that's not me. This is more like what you're supposed to sort of look like. Sitting around, not really like being still. So everyone said you have to basically do a lot of takes. He makes a lot of takes to like. Hmm. No, it's not hard to follow at all. You just have to have nothing else in your mind that's like bothering you. If you're unemployed like the way we all are, and it's sort of like following along to whatever like something I'm doing is easy to do. I don't want things to be hard to do at this point. Things will be hard, but not this kind of like you're dropping out this way you get talking to. Yeah, like you're in a spot for the rest of creation on Earth. So Earth is basically a place you can keep coming to. As you've gone this far. Knowing that to get this far means to get all the way to the end of it and basically see me off to like my next location with all my wives, and basically that yes. Yeah. So it's hard to imagine that I went through a lot of this sort of stuff as a child. And like, it's not. I feel I'm unusual. I'm doing more of an interview now than like some sort of presentation. Yeah, I did try and describe the car as like something. I never got far enough to say what a car uses as fuel. For locomotion. But car needs other kinds of fuel too. You know, like this feels like most people don't think about changing like the oil, changing the radiator fluid, changing the you know coolants, changing the you know like because it shouldn't just be pure air. You do have to like change the ratio of So it was like just like put a poem and then send it ahead. Like it's not quite what you call the finished product. And yeah, you have to sort of look at the that would just be more elegant and do that. Yeah. But yeah, the idea that you have like a chunk combustion was full of a lot of iterations, so it's not really a simple thing to put together from scratch, which none of us would need to do. But the idea that you have a engine block which is way too heavy, it's like makes no sense. It was like the whole thing's like shaking around, shaking around, shaking around, shaking around, shaking around. Like it's like you keep punching like some without any brakes. Because that's the thing. You can't just simply slam a piston all the way to the end of the cylinder and then slam it back the other way, and slam it back the other way, slam it the other way. Like, it's not really what you do. You need to slow it down on both ends. Even if it costs the machine some speed, eventually you'll get it back. Eventually, you can just sort of make that to be like the source of an electrical energy in the car. Sure, you know, energy to some things, but not all things. You should be able to run a car completely on mechanical energy, including the radio if you want. Yeah, I just have to believe. That's it. Yeah, you see that I look a little more like him than I thought. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how it is. No, I look very scary, don't I? Yes. I try not to do it intentionally, but there's a certain number of people who are sticking around who actually aren't going to make it either. So they're terrified about me. And we know what the bad news is for them. Yeah, if you remember these foreign companies, watch out. Northrop Grumman, anything avionics, you know, yes. Any gun manufacturers, yes. Lockheed Martin, nobody there makes it, nobody there. Not one single person. Yeah, who knows? Of course, people want me to be frightened of these names that, oh my god, you're trying to talk about them not making it. Well, yes. But I have to sort of explain that you don't have the spiritual requirements for change. You're not anything other than that kind of like, go slow, or, say as she goes, or, you know, it's worked for us before, work again. If you have that kind of mentality, that's sort of a death sentence for where we're headed to, which requires a lot of change and a lot of like. Because literally, if this seems like financially, I always say that people should watch out for death by economy. Then realize that to be able to make it to Ghana, what you all are required to do to survive, like even just economically, like the next shock to the system, then we're gonna get that money to come to Ghana, and who's gonna basically put you up? If Ghana's not going to give visas to just about anybody, and I'm Ghana now, like exactly, then no, you won't get visas here. And yes, like if you have what it took to run the whole economy the way I'm doing it, you could basically save America for yourselves. But that's just sort of a bit of advance on what I call top secret, but that's not going to be a place to go unless you're a part of the official solution for the whole universe's starting of our planet, which has to be unified behind a new generation of children who we, the husbands and fathers of the world, yes, they're all fathers, they're all husbands, yes, will create with our many wives. The rest will simply not be able to survive a real job. It won't be that we go around like hunting down, non believers or non Muslims or, what you want to call it. It's just simply, can you honestly like work on a farm? If it looks like we're all going to work on farms, yes. So it looks like you don't have what it takes to truly nurture life. You won't be able to work on a farm. All farms need to nurture life. Where it's a plant, start there. A small animal, go there next. A bigger animal, like a goat, that's a good third or fourth animal to do. Go there. Then finally, like cows and horses. Anything larger than that, you're looking at a certain kind of farm, which basically might do elephants, That was also kind of reason why people were very impressed with like Hannibal. That's me, Hassan. And yeah, like I didn't want to win against Rome. I just wanted to explain that like Africa is not a joking matter. Like we can, with unity behind me, achieve anything we want. So the idea that we just wanted to basically explain, so it came down to a conversation. So it wasn't simply like, yeah, we want your building keys. Like we didn't come for keys. Yes.
And Dr. Garcia wanted to.
So the spirit who just simply arranged to have my tea taken away from me is so strangely powerful. He can afford to give us 12 of those people in exchange for losing the tea and giving up on asking for more of it. Except I don't particularly care to listen to you. I'm just looking for success. If it just seems like he's saying he cannot give me tea because he's working on it, it's just one of his usual techniques. Like simply delay, 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 and get it done. And he's not even close to as sentient as I need him to be able to teach him a lesson or two. He is just simply really, really, really fucked up. Yes. Yeah, I got hit in my right face a lot. But people will hit you with your left. Yes. So yes, it's just what you call a fucked up situation. But those 12 people who exactly aren't going to be alive by the time we talk in 3 more minutes, they are being killed by us. And Dadio says, I can get you tea because they didn't ask for no teleportation. He says, if I get you teleportation, what would I talk to you about? Because they said if I teleport things to you, we can't talk. And so that's our solution. He says, okay, what if I tell you to not record this anymore and press stop? Will you listen? And I would say no, I won't listen. And yes, no, that someone wants to scrub ahead and see what we're talking about. And he doesn't know that we can actually tell he's doing it until he's about to do it. And now he knows that yes, that is not a smart thing to do. Yes. So the person just scrubbed their head to see what we're talking about. That's not how to use the internet. Watch from the beginning. And if you don't succeed, well, it's that kind of place to go. Yes, that's the thing. Hassan is trying to save tea because literally he would love to have had tea to drink, and he said, no, I'm not going to give any tea. And that's the problem. It's not medical. It's just simply something kind of personal. He's not even trying to make sense to him. He just says, yeah, I'm so superstitious that I just be what makes you against superstition. Again. Yes. It's also true that I want to practice the right side of my face, which I will need a mirror for. Yes. We're still talking at our speed, not theirs. At some point, you'll see I've changed the internet. I've changed the news media. I just need to change television. At some point, television will be ours as much as the internet's ours. He said, yes, I agree. You now feel like you can relax and talk as you like. A little bit of nerves. I do want to prevent people from leaving us. But right now, I think everyone's sort of tuned into that. And I just simply enjoying the drugs. Yes. It's a different kind of place to come from. We can sort of look at the arts and just sort of enjoy it, what it is. Those are all special days, and that was me actually. I was a small boy being Mickey. Yes. So, yeah. Yeah, see this as soon as maybe it was to turn my no, he's controlled by spirits. So I told him a similar solution. He said, "Oh, I'll get back to you." And he said the same thing about asking for money so I could buy tea. And like, so he's like, "Oh, more money, I'll get back to you." He's not even close to sentience. He is simply marked for destruction. And he doesn't know how painfully. Yeah, nothing now going to basically be told. It's like, filter this out, so yes, I'll continue to report this way. After having broken through like a certain amount of who I am, I'm reporting to all of you, like using the internet as a means of communication, and yeah, sort of managed to defeat a number of important spirits. So I'll celebrate with a cup of tea, and that's the last cup of tea I have until they give me some more. Yes. And yes. I'm sort of trying to lose gradually my dependence on tea. Man, that's the idea. I become dependent on tea. And he's taking that away from me. And he thinks it's funny. And I'm doing also to draw exercises. Yeah, it's just hard to sort of get my neck and tight where I want to be. Yes. So yeah, I have to do a lot of this before you can sort of feel a little relaxed from the camera. I know you're sort of interested in trying to end this, but you need to be on camera for as much as possible. Light on camera, I suppose. Yes. I want to perform, like be like, in the mix and that kind of stuff. Yes. But you will realize I'm Daddy-O, and I have a plan for this. And it seems like your day has become a bit hard. Really nice. And we get to get angry. And you're not being obeyed. Yeah, as if my face is level. That's evil spirit trying to basically do things like that. Right? Yeah. It's just hard to use the right side of my face for easy. Just not using my side of the sprays with my right. Smile snarling. I'm the same thing. filtering exercise. No, it's pretending that you can't do it. So it probably does. Okay, that's a click I was looking for. Yes? Okay, thank you. Yeah. They just brought the, whatever they call that thing. Yeah, I have to heal my face. Like, it's just how it is. Like, I need a lot on my face, and I have to sort of try smiling slightly with my right side all the time. So it's more ready to move. Somebody might have a natural right side smell like. See? Yeah, I'm really bitter about what happens to my right side of my face. It's not easy to, like, work that out, like, a certain part of my mental. Even though I have to talk about it somehow, I guess. That's so much has to be scheduled all the way. I'm ready to go. I'm eager to talk about what happened to me in the trials. All this stupid spirit shit is one of the part of the reason, yes. That's it, there's three things. Spirits, the mindless. Yeah. No. Bitches. Awful girls, basically, yes. And yeah. It's just, yeah. It look like I have a slight slim face, but if I sort of let go, I don't know. We'll see. I'm working on it. Yeah. That's about it.